Do, 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 do. Ba, 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 ba. Hey, everybody. Get in here. So much to talk about. And while we're doing it, we can enjoy a delicious beverage of the breakfast kind. So if you have your cup of coffee, and you really should, get in here. It's time for a simultaneous sip to the tears of our enemies. Raise your cup. For those of you who have not watched CNN in the last several hours, you really have to do it. Normally, I would not recommend one network over the other for news source, but man, do you have to watch CNN today. I'll be on CNN tomorrow, actually. Smirkanish's show. Excuse me just a second. All right. So I had some questions which I want to add to the discussion because we see many peacocks on TV today who are making their Academy Award moment. I might have to get the beer to do this. Hold on. I feel a little left out of the triggering. So I would like to do my impression of a peacock deeply offended by bad words about countries that have bad economic systems. Scene. All right, I have a number of questions for the press. I always like to help. Right? I get up early. I ask some questions that the press can maybe work out during the rest of the day. I'm going to start with this question. Would the president's suggested merit-based immigration make the U.S. more white, or because the white population of the globe is around a quarter and the non-white population of the globe is closer to 75%, if you were to say, give us all the people with, let's say, college educations or a skill that can be immediately employed in the economy, would this formula, which we haven't seen yet, we don't know the details yet, but would this formula give you more white people in the United States or fewer? It seems to me that most of the people in the world are not white. So if you're letting anybody in from a country that allows, immigration to happen, or at least any country that allows people to leave, aren't you going to end up with something closer to 75% non-white people coming into the country than closer to a majority of white people in? Now, that's a question, not a statement, because I actually don't know. I don't know what the merit-based system would look like exactly or what countries are involved. But don't we need to know this? As we're sorting through what is the president's intentions, is this really some clever racist thing as opposed to something that's making America great again? This seems like a key question. So we're looking at the system he doesn't like, and we're talking about that. The system that if your country is in bad shape, you get to the front of the line. Now, I don't even know if that's a bad idea or a good idea, frankly. I'm not going to offer an opinion on that right here, but we at least need to know what to compare it to. Because if we're not comparing it to anything, I don't know. So it could be that the merit that they're talking about could be the ability to speak English. So if that's the case, you might get a different result than if it's not on the criteria. All right. Then the next question for the media is sort of a ethical question. What is worse, the original shithole comment that was made in a room of, 20 people or however many people were in it, which when made, it was obvious that the context of it was that the whole point of the conversation that we're in is that there were some countries that are economic basket cases, and that's the reason they had favored status. So calling countries that are economic basket cases shitholes or shithole countries is very inappropriate. It's deeply offensive, and I certainly wouldn't say it and wouldn't support it, and I can't defend it in any way. But let's compare. The president said something offensive in a meeting with maybe 20 people who understood the context. That's an important thing. Everybody in the meeting understood that he talks this way in private, or at least, when the cameras are not rolling. So they have that context. And they also have the context that he was talking about 7 countries that were only being spoken of because their economies were basket cases. Now, that was plenty bad. But how bad was it compared to whoever leaked it to the press? Because all the problems that we're seeing in the world required 2 things to happen. It required the president to say it, which that problem was now limited to the people in the room who understood the context. And they may have been plenty offended, but it also didn't have much impact on their real world because it happened in a room. But whoever leaked it to the Washington Post, and then the Washington Post itself, are the ones that made it a national story. So was the country damaged when the president said something in a room full of people who understood the context, as offensive as it was? And believe me, on a scale of 1 to 10, it's a 10 for offensiveness. So I'm not taking anything away from that point. I'm just saying that the total amount of damage to the world would have been limited to some people in the room who didn't like the way he addressed it. But once the leaker got a hold of it, the leaker had the chance to really, and since we're all saying shithole today, would you allow me that just today for this post, because the topic is shithole, would you allow that I can curse a little bit today? Because kids shouldn't be watching this anyway. Is everybody okay with me doing a little cursing today? Any objections? All right. Send the children away. They should be in school anyway. A little bit of cursing. Let me make my same point with cursing. All right. When the president said shithole in that meeting that was not televised and not recorded, it was a mistake. It was offensive. It was bad. On a scale of 1 to 10, it was offensive 10 out of 10. All right. But the damage was also limited to however people felt in the room, which really was no damage at all, because they saw it in context. Once the leaker decided to leak it, and then worked with the Washington Post, the reporter, the leaker and the Washington Post then took this small problem that was limited to 1 room and didn't really affect the United States, and they fucked the hell out of us. They fucked us hard. By us, I mean you and me, right? So as citizens of the United States, they fucked us as hard as you could fuck somebody. I mean, they're fucking us hard. Now, of course, they think they're doing God's work to get rid of this president or embarrass him, or maybe the reporter's just doing their job, and maybe the leaker's just an asshole. But what the president said was plenty bad. And of course he should have known there was a high risk that it would be leaked out. That's all on him. Those mistakes are the president's mistakes. I'm not minimizing them. I'm not decreasing them. I'm saying that that's a 10 out of 10 of a mistake. But it was also limited to people's sensibilities in the room, and I'm pretty sure that nobody in that room was offended. All right. Also, nobody in that room was from any of the affected countries, didn't take it as personally as they would if they had been from those countries. But when the leaker, whose name we don't know, and the reporter, whose name we do know, when they got together, they took this very small non-problem and they fucked the piss out of us. I mean, they fucked us hard. All right, we took this great week when the country was doing great, everything was going okay, and they just fucked us. Okay? So how do you feel about the president? You should be kind of mad. maybe disappointed. But how do you feel about the leaker and the person who decided to write this in a story and tell the world, and then take it out of the context where everybody talks that way, because these are politicians, right? They kind of all swear. They use colorful language. They all know what they're talking about. The damage, if there is some, is contained. All right. Then this next question, which you won't see the media cover, I don't think, is that the contention is that if it is racist to end favored status for these countries that are, I won't call them shitholes, I'll call them, badly economically disadvantaged countries. If it's racist to end the favored status, wasn't it racist to have it in the first place? I don't know how to avoid that. Now they didn't do it for racist reasons, but the president is not suggesting that we end it for racist reasons either. So the reasons we did it were not racist. They just happened to be the countries that were economically disadvantaged. The reason the president is looking to end it is also not for a stated racist reason. You can imagine it in his head, but he didn't state anything like that. He's talking about his, he was comparing it to a merit-based immigration system, all right? Which we don't know because the press hasn't told us. Would that get us more white people or fewer? If all the president did was move us from one immigration system that, that didn't have the advantage of bringing in the smarter and best people to another one, but they both reduce the number of white people in the country radically over time. I don't know how radically, but over time, because it depends on the size of the immigration flow. I'm not sure that's a big difference, and I haven't seen this reported. So we should at least know how those two things compare before we get too excited about it. Now, I've seen a lot of people saying that this is really clever on the president's part, because what he ended up doing is getting people to talk about these countries being shitholes, and then everybody says, okay, well, why would we, Yeah, so some people are saying that this is a clever plan. I'm not on that side. I don't think there was anything clever about it. I think he just used the normal way that he swears in private settings, or semi-private settings. And then it just got taken out of context and magnified and turned into something terrible by the leaker and the Washington Post. So let me use an analogy not to persuade you, but to make a point. If you heard that somebody shot somebody in the head for no good reason and just killed them, somebody murdered somebody, on a scale of 1 to 10, how bad would that be? Well, 10, right? That's a 10 out of 10. If somebody murders somebody for no reason, 10 out of 10. That's the worst that it could be. Now if I asked you, what if somebody murdered 100 people? Is it worse to murder 100 people than it is to murder one person? Well, almost all of us would say yes, and we would say it's 100 times worse, even though the original murder is a 10 out of 10. But murdering 100 people is 100 times worse. So back to this point, the president said something that was limited in scope, like murdering one person, meaning that it's bad, right? And there's nothing good about it. It's all bad. But once the leaker and the Washington Post got a hold of it, they magnified that bad to 7 billion people. So in rough terms, the leaker and the Washington Post combined did something that by any reasonable standard is almost 1 billion times, I'm not even exaggerating, I don't think, 1 billion times worse, because that's about how many people are going to hear it. So it's 1 billion times worse on an ethical and moral standard, because it can actually change the world, change how people deal with the world, embarrass the United States, etc. All right. Yeah, so analogies are not meant to be persuasive, and I think you saw it did not persuade you. But in terms of explaining a concept, that murdering one person can be 10 out of 10 bad, but murdering 100 is still 100 times worse than the worst thing, because it's more of it. So yeah, the Washington Post and the leaker are roughly, in rough numbers, 1 billion times less ethical than the president was for what he did in terms of damage. All right. I'm just looking at your comments. The Peacocks will be busy today, but I hope that they at least answer some questions for us. Did you see the Durbin comment? Yeah, so Durbin said that he says stuff like this all the time, or something like that. You consistently defend racism. When have I ever defended racism? That's a weird thing to even say. Shame on you. For what? Was there anything that anybody disagreed with here? People are going to be mad at me without disagreeing with me. If you watch what happens to my Twitter feed and what happens to me today, just watch the fallout I get for even asking these questions. It's going to be pretty brutal today. Did you see Trump's tweet? Where he said he didn't say it, right? Now, saying that he didn't say it, it may be that he didn't say it in exactly the way it was quoted. I heard Rich Lowry say that his information from inside the meeting is that the president did not say shithole. Naval, how's it going? He did not say shithole, that he said shithouse. And if that's true, that actually would make more sense, because shithouse is more of a real estate term. You know, if you're a real estate developer and you're talking about some property you have to knock down to build another one there, you'd say, well, we're going to knock down that shithouse and build a beautiful building there. So it's possible that he said shithouse, which does actually slightly change it, but it's still a 10 out of 10 bad. You can't defend it. Yeah, he did say the countries were shithole, not the people. And that's why you have to ask. So here's a question for the media. This is a question that they should ask the president. So I hope somebody asks him this today. Mr. President, so this is what CNN should ask him if they believe they've interpreted things correctly. They say, Mr. President, under the immigration plan that you support, an immigration plan that would be merit-based, would you allow somebody from Haiti into the country if they had the merit that you specify? Now, if he says no, well, then we've accidentally elected the worst racist in the world. And if he says, of course, everybody who passes the merit standards is welcome in the country because they're going to be additive. Doesn't matter where they're from Haiti, from Africa, doesn't matter. Now, if he says that, and then he also says, and by the way, most people in the world are not white, so if we have a merit-based system, we're going to bring in, I think the current, you can fact check me on this, but right now the United States is roughly 55% white. Can somebody fact check me on that? But the world is about 25% white. So if we're opening up immigration to any country that wants to come in and it's merit-based, outside of the banned, the 7 banned countries, I guess, then would that grow our percentage of white residents or shrink it? So I think it's an open question because I actually don't know the answer to it. But if we're not asking that question, we don't have anything to compare it to. So let's compare it to something and find out how offended we need to be. You would apologize for anything he says. No, you shithole, I wouldn't, because I'm doing exactly the opposite of that. I just spent a whole bunch of time saying it was a mistake on a level of 10 and a 10. So all of you shitholes who come in here and say that I'm apologizing for it, I think you should clean the shit out of your shithole head and pay attention a little bit better. Thank you for that diversion. All right. Maybe he was testing. No, I don't think there was anything especially clever about this. I think he was just using his usual colorful language in his usual shorthand way. And once it leaked, it got him in trouble. I don't think there's any complexity to this one. You're disappointed in what? What are you disappointed in? Who's disappointed in me? If you are, just say so in the comments. If you have a point, I'll listen to it. If there's something you should be disappointed in me, let me know what it is, and I'll tell you if I think it's valid. I think you said he was very wrong if he did in fact say it. Right. Yeah, it was a mistake of large proportion, I would say. But it was also limited to the room, except for the fucking assholes who leaked it and decided to make an article out of it. Those people fucked the world and fucked the country pretty hard. The other argument that I'm hearing is we're hearing people say, I saw an article on, I think it was on CNN's page, about the top graduate at West Point or something. I may have some of the details wrong. Was an immigrant from Haiti. So somebody saying, look, we would have lost, this great kid who went to a military academy and graduated at the top of his class. If we didn't have any immigration from Haiti, we would have missed, this awesome person who is a good American and will add to the country. To which I say, that's Trump's plan. Trump's plan is to bring in the good Americans from everywhere, including Haiti. Unless I'm wrong, the media should be asking that question today. Would you have allowed this highly qualified, clearly he, had a lot of qualities because he made it to the top of his military academy. It seems objectively speaking that this was a very qualified person. So would that person have come in under your plan? I think so. But let's get some details on that plan. Yeah, so we need to know who leaked it because the leaker is the one who caused the damage. It is entirely appropriate, and I understand why we'd want to know if the president is a racist or not a racist and what he says behind closed doors that might reveal, some big problem, etc. I get all that. But in this case, it's so obvious that this was colorful language speaking to the economic situation of 7 countries that were being discussed because of their economic situation, and that this is his normal colorful language for those situations. I think the leaker by far is the damage creator, even though not the original offense. Okay, I think maybe we've said everything we need to say. Why is the offense a 10 instead of a 5 or 6? Well, just because the most offensive thing that we ever hear is about people, right? So deriding people for how they were born or what they look like in our society, that's about as bad as you can do. That's, outside of an actual crime. That's about the worst thing you can do. All right, so let's see if we find out who the leaker was, because by any measure, the leaker is the worst person in the world. Well, actually, that might be true. I would say that the leaker might qualify as the worst person in the world today, if you consider all the damage that it will cause, and didn't need to happen. All right, I'm going to sign off now and do some other work, and goodbye to all of you.